Welcome to Theba Time, where I discuss thoughtful tools, resources, and shared experiences to help and encourage caregivers of loved ones living with dementia. Good afternoon, all our caregivers out there that we love dearly. Even though we haven't met you, we know what you're going through, right, Carolyn?
Absolutely.
I am here with Carolyn Berry with the Alzheimer's Arkansas, my mentor and dear friend. I always have to say mentor. And this is going to be my last podcast for a while.
Sadly.
But I have good news. Alzheimer's Arkansas is starting their own podcast with yours truly over there, Carolyn.
I know, they kind of got me, started in this. So now, as she ends, I will pick up a podcast called I Didn't Sign Up for This.
I love that. I love that title. Yeah, so it's perfect timing. And I didn't even know you were starting one when I feel like God was encouraging me to go ahead and stop for a while. I don't know, 1 season, 2 seasons, maybe forever. I just don't know because God's in control of my life. But my mother's health, Alzheimer's, is progressing, but also her physical issues are, she's just getting more fragile. So she needs more of my attention daily, from bathroom to bed to wherever. And I just want to keep a good eye on her and remove distractions, even though I was just doing this two times a month. I just needed things off of my mind. I don't feel pressure. I don't get paid to do the podcast, so it's certainly not a burden, but I think this will be my 63rd.
Wow. So you started in 21.
I started in 21. Yes. I actually went part-time at the TV station to pay more attention to my mom. Here's the deal. 2020, pandemic, my mom got so used to me working from home. And so I continued to work from home as they started rolling people in to the office. And then I knew eventually I'd be rolled in. So I just felt the need, because it was too confusing for her. Mm-hmm. You're asking Alzheimer's patients to understand a global pandemic. Why are you home? Then when you do leave, why did you leave?
Yes.
And then what I realized quickly was that 4 hours, I was working 4 hours a day, so maybe I had to run off and go shoot a story. When I would come back, she thought I was gone 12 hours a day. I mean, it's just like the time was it was such an interesting issue. So she thought that it was a long day for her. Even if I came home and I was working from the office, I was not in sight. So I was beginning to understand that. So even though she was glad I was home, if she didn't see me, she didn't know I was home.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So when I show up, I just realized, wow, okay, so I think I went part-time in September of 2021, and then started the podcast in August. And because I was so excited, I'm just listening, I want to make sure we don't have that weird echo. Okay. Every time Carolyn and I do a podcast, there's just something bizarre happens. So I'm just taking a peek or a listen. I know you were about to ask me, so I'll go ahead and answer it. But, the reason I started the podcast, you always think you know, but you don't really know.
You don't really know.
I think that I needed to connect. We had just come through the pandemic, and still we're in it. What are we talking about? 2021, we were still in it. And so 2022, we were still going to be dealing with it. Mm-hmm. I knew I was retiring from the TV station at the end of that year, and it gave me a way to connect, stay connected, have fellowship on a topic that was important to me, and that was to understand more tools, resources, but to share them.
Yes. I think that was very important, to share the transparency of your journey.
Well, and I think, too, that I always talked about the fact that even though I didn't get to stay in support group very long, or I didn't go to as many classes as I would have liked to have gone to, because both my parents were diagnosed in 2017. And my dad, I just moved my dad here every class, in every group, there was a nugget that I took with me, and it was so important. It was empowering. Mm-hmm. So I realized, wow, the more I was able to connect with people about the disease or hear from someone through Facebook or through an email, I realized how much more I felt connected and not alone in every case. That's in every situation, but you feel a lot more of distance because you're not able to get out as much. So, and especially during that time. Mm-hmm. But if you've committed to being a full-time caregiver, you're pretty much home 90% of the time.
Yeah, about 90%. So, as we have been talking, and you told me this was the last one, I think it was last week, and even talking now, it reminds me of a question that I'm often asked. So, the question is, how do I know when it's time? How do I know when it's time? Like, how did you know when it was time to become a full-time caregiver? How do you know when it's time to transition to the next shift? And, I often tell people, like, that is not a question I can answer for you. Like, mm-hmm. There's no checklist of this, like, for every person, because every person is different. So as you think about your different shifts, how did you know it was time?
Well, first of all, my faith in Jesus Christ. I've always had to rely on him to either trip me up, knock me down, to get me to pay attention. Just feeling the Spirit, hearing the Spirit's voice impact me in a direction because I don't know what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. And that's in everything. So not just dealing with my parents and Alzheimer's, but just in life. So I've always depended on that, relied on that clarity, because when Christ encourages me through the Spirit to do something, it's not logical or rational to the world. Like, my friends are like, "What? You're about to retire? How are you going to live? What do you get?" And I was like, I certainly didn't just shoot from the hip. I did know by watching how my dad's care was so expensive. Mm-hmm. He could afford it, what it took. He had a more aggressive form of dementia. But also how important caregivers are, that your parents will connect with them for the long haul. So I just told people that I'm the most qualified and cheapest caregiver. But I just knew. Obviously I'm not saying that because I grabbed it from air. It was time, and you just make these decisions. And again, they don't seem logical or rational to the world or even to yourself at the time, but you're going on faith and you're trusting.
So do you feel like, because I often, when caregivers ask me, like, when is it time to get help? When is it time to quit my job? When is it time to consider other things? I almost feel like when you start to ask that question, you already know it's time.
You and I just talked about this as we were breaking bread together. We had some lunch before we started. 2 episodes ago, when Carolyn and I would do our podcast, we really never had an agenda. We, again, just kind of went on what maybe God had laid on your heart or my heart. And 2 episodes ago, through a conversation we began, because it was on my mind, hospice. And the reason hospice was on my mind is not because my mom was near death, but I was keeping my dad's situation always at the forefront of my mind. If I had understood hospice and I had understood palliative care, and I didn't really, even by that conversation with you, I didn't understand palliative care. But if I had understood the role of hospice, my dad would have been signed up a lot sooner than he was. We literally signed my dad up for hospice, and he died 6 days later. Yeah, that's how quick. So I think that it would have been less of a shock, and we would have had more support ahead of time. But then through you, and then going ahead and having that discussion with you, you asked me about it, and we were chatting along, and I could feel my heart kind of racing a little bit, and the emotions, because we were just talking about it. again, knowing that when you begin talking about hospice, it doesn't mean that that's it.
Although it can feel like it, even in your heart,
Absolutely.
right? Yeah.
Absolutely. So, but knowing, all right, I knew enough about Dad's situation, so this time I want to be ahead with my mom. So after you and I had that discussion, because anytime you've offered me a challenge or encouraged me or brought something to my mind, I went ahead and pursued it, whether it was the respite care grant, whatever it might be, getting things written out for caregivers, just being organized. I've done that. And then we tried to encourage other people to do that. Just staying ahead on what you can do and what might happen. I mean, I just told Carolyn I ordered a bedside, portable potty because I feel like we're going to need it one day. I don't want to need it. And then, now, of course, with Amazon, it might come in 2 days. But what if we have another pandemic? What if we have another shutdown? What happens?
But you don't know how fast you might need it either.
Absolutely.
Things change so fast.
Whether for her side of the bed or I'm just taking another listen to make sure we're not echoing. But, or for when we're in my room during the day, that's where we spend the day hanging out. So, and then I got an extra railing for my side of the bed because, again, that's where we hang out. I have a retractable bed so we treat it like a big couch. But just kind of putting stuff in motion of things because when there is a shift, now with my dad's, the shift was so dramatic because he had dementia Lewy body. With Mom, the shift is always dramatic for me. So, because it's my mom. And even though her Alzheimer's is more, I guess, linear in movement, when the shift happens, or a shift of some kind, that's how I feel helpless. Then I'm like, I get on Amazon. What do I need? I look up elderly things.
You put elderly things?
I look up elderly care, things for the bedroom, things for the bathroom. And I start thinking about her and what if she starts doing this or what if that, let me just get it. I'm just going to get it and I'm going to have it here and put it in motion. It makes me feel productive as I see her struggling. And I would say that you've seen everything I've gotten. It makes sense.
It makes sense.
We haven't needed the bedside. I'm pretty sure we're going to need it. I feel confident we will need it, but it's there and it's ready. I also got some waterproof pads to put under just where she sits in my bed because she does have one on her bed, but just in case, because her physical abilities are diminishing quickly. Whether it's her Alzheimer's telling her legs that they don't function, kind of like my dad, or it's part of her bone, blood issue that's weakening her. We don't know, but it doesn't matter. She's just very feeble.
So, again, I think it goes back to, so to me, this is very important education-wise and sharing that almost when you feel like, when you start asking questions, when you want to call me or talk to support group, and you start asking questions about, when is it time for this? And it's really, you're feeling it's time.
I agree.
Or you see some signs that a transition is happening. So,
and you have to rely on that in yourself. Other people might make observations, but they're not here, or they're not. If you're the sole caregiver and it's full time and you're paying attention, and I do try to pay attention. And again, that's one of the reasons I'm going to stop the podcast. I mean, you and I always enjoyed doing the podcast, and Mom would wander in and interrupt because she didn't quite understand. Well, she can't wander in anymore, and I'm going to miss that.
And I know the things that I tell caregivers, the things you think you won't miss, right? Yeah. So, and that's only been a few sessions ago that she was coming in and talking to us. So now she's not. So I remember, before that she would wait and be like, okay, I could wait. And then it went to like she wander in, and now there's another shift. So in the shifts, how's Theba?
Well, I always act like I can handle whatever shifts are coming.
You always act like you can handle them. Yeah.
But the shift of her fatigue and inability to, walk without the walker, but also walk with the walker, and I needed to be present because she would get dizzy and then I think the thing that was the biggest shift was she would sleep all day, and I mean sleep. Mm-hmm. So before I could rely on her maybe napping, and I would never hear it, hear that nap, but she would be looking out the window and make a mention of the sky or the birds or the cats or whatever it might be. But now she's in a deep breathing sleep. And that started getting me really sad, because then you think, this is it. Like, this is a shift, that this is a dramatic shift. And it's been going on now for all week. It started last Sunday. So again, the timing of just kind of knowing, because you and I were supposed to do a podcast last week, but this week just kind of set in motion. Mm-hmm. The beautiful part is her spirit, so it's still so sweet and fun and feisty. So she might wake up from that deep sleep, and I think it sounds like she's in like Never Never Land, and she'll wake up and she'll go, yeah, or what? And I'm like, it's like, oh, good. Not because I think she's passed away, because obviously she hasn't, because it's her deep breathing. But I think sometimes I wonder if she's going to wake up and be really confused.
Like in a different...
But she never is yet. She wakes up and like, hey, wow, what a pretty day. And I'm like, here, why don't you drink some water? And we knew this shift was coming because now it's here. Do not put any food in front of her. She's not going to eat it. And so we obviously are drinking lots of protein drinks, and now I have vitamin drinks, so she doesn't have to worry about swallowing, and water, and just keep that going.
And keep it going.
And keep it going off, because now I'm having to put it in there during these huge naps that she's taking. I think, Carolyn, too, that what's so weird and frustrating about this disease is that that she's not going to get better. But man, like I would say yesterday, in the afternoon, she wasn't napping as much. She was more, and it messes with your head.
So, I think, this is what I know. So one part of human nature of who we are, and, people of faith too, we always have this hope.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right?
For sure.
So even if it's not like the hope that she's going to get better, the hope that she's back where she was like before that transition, right?
Absolutely.
Before she was sleeping, like you're like, maybe that was just like a couple days. That's not going to last long. So it's always like a hope of course, we know where, it's going to the disease is going to progress, but you're like, oh, maybe that was just like something. Because, we all get tired.
Fighting some kind of bladder infection, which we don't want, because that's usually...
But you know how we all get a little tired sometimes, mm-hmm. and we need a little bit more rest. And you're like, maybe it's just that. And so this hope that it's not as bad as you think it is, or the transition is not happening.
Yeah. No. And that's what the whole mind, messing with your mind, because I came in the kitchen and had to come apart. Because this would have been the second day she was just out like a light throughout the day. So much so that I'd wake her up and go, hey, we probably need to go potty. And, oh, okay. And then I'd get her up. So I cried and cried, and then called my best friend, cried and cried and cried. And because you know that you know that you know.
So you don't so that goes back to, you don't really have to ask anyone else, when's it time? Like there's something in you, mm-hmm. when you're aware that is telling you, but we don't want to trust. Sometimes we don't want to trust what we see or feel.
I agree, because especially as women, because the men in our life we're being dramatic, over emotional, something. Overreacting. Most of us hear those terms throughout our life. Emotional.
Like, yes. So
and I do trust my emotions. I do trust them. I don't trust them with other people.
That makes sense.
I trust that they're telling me something. That's been my whole life. And, I know faith is not a feeling, but we have emotions. So I'm focused on trusting God with all of this. And at the same time, I'm taking my thoughts captive to the obedience of His truth, because I want to focus on things above and stay as positive as I can, but realistic. I'm not trying to deny what's happening, but also ask the Holy Spirit to filter those feelings as only the Holy Spirit can, because they were given to us too. So I do a lot of dishing off now to the Holy Spirit, more than I ever have. But ultimately, trusting that it's time to retire. It was time to go part-time. It was time to retire. I didn't have to ask anyone. I really didn't. I may have mentioned it to friends, but I have to trust the Holy Spirit's guidance on those big ticket items, because yes, your friends and other people can encourage you or maybe have an idea, but they're just not in your space. They're not, this is not their walk. And so anybody can talk you out of something that doesn't sound logical. Like, you're going to retire? How are you going to live? How are you going to do this? How are you going to do that?
And even when they see our loved ones, when someone else sees our loved one, a lot of times they're not in the same state that they're in normally. Like, they function better. We talked about that a little bit. They function better when other people are around. So you're seeing them when they're not, I'll say, performing. I hate to use that word like they are.
With you mostly, she has, with my best friend, she's like, hey.
Yeah.
She wants to put on a good...
So when we see them, it looks like, oh, she's always together and she's always happy. And, I don't see why why would she need to do this? But because we don't see the reality of everything that's going on. So we even have this skewed view of what the diseases look like or where they are, because they're always trying to be at their best in front of other people.
Oh yeah, when you take them to the doctor. And I was always worried about it, because I knew my mother would put on an act. My dad didn't. He was the way he is, and he was okay with, like, no, I'm struggling. Mom was the opposite. So I used to get such anxiety when we would go to her longevity doctor, because I'm like, God, what if I've been telling her about Mom's activities, whatever, and what if she sees something different?
Yeah.
Again, this is where you just trust God. It's like, well, they're aware. If they're a longevity doctor, they know that the person's going to put on a little performance, because my mom would always be scared and want to put on her best personality, her best act, and act all this. And again, you have to trust yourself. And so your world becomes a little smaller. I think I told you I pray often, remove unanointed people and activities from my life so I can stay focused and trust that I'm hearing the Holy Spirit's instructions, since God's the only one that knows what the next day holds and what the next hour holds. So I just go forward, and I go ahead and sign Mom up for palliative care. Here it is, I sign her up, and man, she's taken a turn for the worst already. So she might end up needing hospice before you know it. But we've set in motion. It won't be like with my dad. It won't be kind of this knee-jerk reaction, for lack of a better term, because we just didn't understand what to do at the time with him. Most of his caregivers that came, they weren't nurses. So they couldn't have seen what a palliative care or a hospice nurse would have seen. And I had lunch. I've been taking respite care under your guidance on Wednesday, so I can go to community group, women's Bible study group, and stay for the whole time.
See, I didn't even have to ask the question, because this is what I was about to tell you, because I hadn't told you. So you would be probably amazed, but maybe not. When I'm out, people I think you made me, and famous or whatever, it's like, you're on the podcast with Theba. And I'm like, yes. And so they have started to ask about you like a lot and how are you doing? So, and they're going to hear that this is your last one for a little while. How is Theba going to? And you're getting into your Wednesdays. So since you're signing off the air for a little bit, what is Theba doing for herself? Like, how is she going to continue to take care of herself?
Well, after the first year, I did, again, the most important thing is you always encourage me to stay on top of my annual doctor visits. So I got all of them done. I even had cataract surgery done because I had cataracts. But I got that. I got my girly visits done. Everything's fine. I got my eye. I went to the dentist. Again, timing. Isn't that interesting? Because I could do some of those things and call on friends to come and sit with Mom. But as Mom progresses, I don't want to put my friends in an uncomfortable position of that kind of responsibility. So obviously the caregiver I have that comes on Wednesdays has some experience. She's a retired nurse. She's already given me some great tips. But she comes, and what I do is now I look forward to Wednesday because first of all I can go and have some relief. That here's a woman who will call 911 if she has to, then call me, do whatever she needs to do, be there, make sure Mom gets back and forth to the potty. And when Mom wakes up from one of those naps, she's not alone. So because the caregiver sits right in there with her, and they watch something on Discovery or History. It's funny. American Pickers. Oh my God,
I've seen that before.
Yeah. So again, knowing that if anyone came to the door, this woman already said, I'm not answering the door unless you tell me somebody's coming. So you just have this relief. And so I go and I'm able to participate in women's Bible study for the fullness of it, meaning the worship and the teaching, and then break out in group. And then a couple of times I've gone right after that and gone to lunch with friends. Had a lunch date with a friend, ran some errands, maybe got my back adjusted, always go to the store and just kind of get all that done. And I feel really good about getting that, just kind of taking advantage of that opportunity, right? I did have a friend ask me at lunch, this was probably last Wednesday, she said, are you prepared? And I knew what she was asking, for my mom to get worse or to pass away. And I said, nope.
No, you will not be.
Nope. And then I said, yes. I said, nope, and then yes. And what I mean by the yes is just like, I just think about, I was there when my grandmother passed. I grew up there. I grew up in that moment, watching someone take their last breath. Then I had to put my cat to sleep. I never thought I would go and be with my cat, because I never had before. So I grew up a little bit there. And then I was there when my dad took his last breath. Yes, 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 yes. Mother is going to be the hardest. And I'm not prepared for that, but I know God will give me the grace for it. I try not to go there thinking about it, because in the flesh I'm not going to handle it. But with Him, I can. I think that, so I answered her very honestly and quickly, because I first said, no. You know, I mean, people can say all day long.
I don't think you can prepare, but I mean, you may have the knowledge of it will. You have the knowledge that even it could be at any time with this disease. I think, so sometimes I tell people when I can get them in a place that, and I think that's the gift of Alzheimer's. Does that sound weird? So the gift of like Alzheimer's and dementia in this, and I don't think we really think about this like this. So natural order, if we think there's a natural order of life, and it's hard to accept death and like our parents are going to pass away. So, and as they get older, it's a gift every day because they could just be healthy and not be here.
Yeah.
Right? But we don't think about that.
Yeah.
We think, so, you know, as they get older, we are not meant to be here forever. So in the natural process of life or whatever, every day is a gift to all of us anyway. So, but many of us, like if our parents aren't sick, if they're doing fine, if it looks like they're healthy and everything is okay, we have a perception that this is going to go on forever until they're 99, 100. Like that's how we feel. But one day it happens, right? But with a disease like Alzheimer's, and you get this transition, you get these transitions and shifts, and you're like, okay, it's getting closer. You still don't know when, but it's almost a gift of spending more time, making sure the quality of life is good, the quality of your relationship. Amen. So it's a different type of gift that we get because we're not walking around thinking, we have 25 more years. Right. Like, because that's how our brain works. Like, we have forever.
Oh, right. Yeah, that totally makes sense because when you begin to make decisions, even if you call palliative care and begin the process, do the interview, get them, and then the nurse comes out and does her thing, your focus changes. You make a decision to stop the podcast for a while. You're focusing in, and there is a freedom to that. There's a freedom to being able to focus in and know that you're free to do just what you talked about. Pay attention to those details.
Yes, and it's a gift. Yeah. And when you really sit down in that thought of, although the disease is not a gift in some ways, it brings about some gifts that if we did not know, maybe some things we didn't pay attention to. So to give an example, and let's say she didn't have the disease and you were still working and doing your life and doing everything, and you like, she's healthy, and then you come home one day and she's not here. And then you think about, I should have spent more time with her. I could have did, all the things we think we should have, could have done. Now you don't have to have those regrets.
And you do, I say to her 10, 12, 15 times a day, I love you. I love you, Mama. And I don't know, you say you try to be dead to self and alive to that situation, dead to self because you got to put all your focus in, but you can't because you got your feelings and your thoughts.
Yes.
But there is a transition you make if you allow it. We're talking about allowing the transition to begin to even talk about. Remember when we were talking about hospice, I was like, yes. Like, oh, that word, and you begin to make a transition, and God's there helping you do it to the next phase that you don't know is coming. Or, for me, it's thinking that I can't handle it. It always is, right? Oh, I can't handle that. How am I going to help her go to the potty and help her with the issues of potty, right?
I think that's one of the biggest issues.
Oh, yeah, but it's like, I'm going to have to help her. Like, and I, without going into details, help her. And I can, because I have. It's like doing her nails. She used to do her toenails all the time. And I don't have her wear socks because I worry about the floor slipping. And so I was like, I need to do your toenails. And then I did her fingernails. So you make these things that you don't think you're going to be comfortable with. Helping her bathe. More and more, where at first when we started out and I thought maybe I should help her, she was like, you're not helping me, I'm a grown. But now she's like, okay, now what do you want me to do next? And, really, if I don't stand in there with her, she'll wash her hair 2 or 3 times because she forgets. But you press in, you press into things that were important to them. Her nails were important. My hairdresser's so sweet, she's going to come cut her hair at the house. So we don't have to go up there. But yesterday we dressed her. We did. Sometimes I just leave her in her PJs because she's you can tell she's going to sleep, but sometimes I go ahead and put her in some clothes. And like when you were coming over, she was like, well, I need to get dressed. And I said, you know what, Mommy, you don't have to get dressed. Carolyn doesn't care if you're dressed today. Okay. It was so
like,
easy.
Like,
she didn't even put on lipstick. It's like.
And she always has on lipstick. Yeah.
So those are the things that you press in on things that you know you're going to have to pay attention to and do, and you're not sure you can handle them maturely, right? It's like, I feel like, will I be mature about this? Like helping her in the potty, helping her, I need to be mature.
I'm made of this.
It's like, I want to be mature, because every time that you have to help, you're being reminded that they need you more and more and more and more. But what I was saying about all of a sudden when everything becomes, it's kind of like when the tornado happened. There was something miraculous about after the tornado, of course. Your focus is so narrow, and it's on what happened. And I'm talking about months later. And there's a peace that comes with that, and there's also a strength and a confidence, because you're having to take care of things that you never thought you would
or could.
Yes. And it's the same thing with your mama, because you love her so much. And so I didn't want that. I loved that headspace of after the tornado, a week or two after, of when I would get up and look out the window, the reality of life, the preciousness of life, what you don't have control over. There's something extremely freeing about it. So I feel like I'm having that experience right now with her. I think the only thing that keeps me stirred up a little bit is when she can't walk on her own, because sometimes, now look, right now I'm helping her get dressed, and that's comical. And I'm getting better about it. And I'm getting ideas from the caregiver about how to make sure I save my back.
Yes.
But I think what I know is coming is the bedridden part.
Yes.
She's gotten so tiny. And when she sleeps, she breathes heavier. I see some things now that I remember seeing with Grandma, because they look so much alike right now. Yeah. So thin, but also their face. But I would see how my grandma was sleeping, and I'd go in and check on her and just see her changes. So I think that's just seeing your mom old has been the hardest transition for me in the last couple of months. Yeah. Especially when they can't hang on to weight.
Yes.
Because everything in their face changes. And when they're laying down, it really changes. It's just odd. You just start paying attention to a lot more.
So you have a self-care plan.
I do. And you and I, even though you have to know that Carolyn and I have already planned out.
Yeah, we've already had our calendar dates ready.
Because usually when she would come for podcast, she would stay. We would possibly eat, but we had fellowship and prayer. We would talk, and so we are going to continue that on a day that's really convenient for her. Because when she would come to my house for the afternoons, that was work for her, but we would have time to hang out.
So, and we're transitioning it out of work to maybe Saturday morning coffee.
Perfect, because I'm free, and I think obviously with Mom getting weaker and not functioning the way she did. Part of that self-care, obviously, is saying no to things. And that's not like I did a lot of things. The podcast was the only extra thing I would do, but I do it at my house, which made it convenient. But it was something on my mind. I'm trying to get things off of my mind. that kind of distraction, because weird things start happening. Like I was excited about Bible study, so it wasn't as if I was stressed. My caregiver was here, everything was fine. I grabbed my laptop instead of my Bible, put it in the car seat, and then I got to the church. I was like, what do I? I was like, okay, and this is the weirdest thing. So on that same day, so I must have been in Dada land. You have to know that you're not going to be. You may not feel stressed.
Yeah, but you are.
I did. I went to the worship, stayed for the lesson, and I got confused by the instruction at the end, because we normally have group, but we did a little something different, did kind of an altar call for women who are really struggling, and she just said, and then you're dismissed. And she usually says you're dismissed to go to group, and I just left. I didn't think we were having group. I didn't beat myself up for it. I remember the leader contacted me that night, goes, everything okay? I saw you were there and I was like, oh my gosh. Let me tell you, I was so confused. I thought that you all had really switched things up and that we weren't staying for group. And so you're just like, okay, well, that happened. But because these shifts and phases come with more layered emotions, I'm going to say.
Yes.
The more that you can relieve yourself of this and that, the better.
Yeah, the more clarity you can have,
Mm-hmm.
and like what's next, how to take care of yourself, and where you are. Because I know you don't want to miss anything.
Right. I don't want to miss. Goodness. No, I don't want to miss. I know that I've been given a beautiful opportunity to be her full-time caregiver. God has provided. We're just buying the necessities, things we need. We don't need to go anywhere. My gosh, I've really saved on gas and clothes and makeup. But we don't need anything. We just need food, and we need to pay, and we're so grateful for what we have. And, I've told you my testimony of how God provided for my dad, and even and at the end, for sure, it's like I have that to rely on. And so it's not going to be up to me. It's going to be up to me to pay attention, to make those choices, to be wise, to continue to do Wednesdays. Even when Bible study's over, I'm going to continue to make Wednesday my time to run errands. Maybe when it gets pretty, go on a walk, go ride a bike, have lunch. I enjoyed so much having lunch with my friend and planning it. So there's that. So, so I think that I know I'm going to have days like I did Monday where I had to come apart.
And you have support for come aparts. And it's okay to have come aparts.
Yeah, I needed it.
I really I shouldn't say but I really honor you for your come aparts, because you allow it to happen, which in some part relieves stress down the road. Like, let's deal with this come apart right here. Right
and
now.
I never know when they're going to come. And it's like, you can't force them. But I had it, right? And it's like, and I was so grateful I could, when you have a come apart like that, it's important to have it with somebody. You can't have it in front of your mother or with your mother, because she wouldn't understand. But my friend answered the phone, and so she wasn't in a meeting. And so I could just cry and just tell her this is hard. I said, Mom's not doing well, and it's hard. And I'm struggling with this, is this going to get harder? And when is it going to get harder? And it's hard to see her that way. And then just, of course, I had a headache the rest of the day, because when you cry, but I knew that was important. But I also knew that the next day, like, I had to make the shift to this new reality. And you're going to have those times where it's going to mess with your mind a little bit, because all of a sudden she seems to be doing better. And
yes.
I think I told you that she never goes anywhere without her walker, and then I'm making my coffee and she's standing right behind me. And I thought she was sound asleep. So I was like, whoa! And, she wasn't real stable, so I went and got that walker real quick. But, little weird things like that happen and kind of catch you off guard. But when you see it, you're like, oh, she's better.
She's better.
But she's not going to get better. It's not like she's having chemo and there's a chance for remission.
Yes.
There's no opportunity for remission from this. So
she's having a better day.
Yeah, which
or
then
moment.
and then I have a better day.
And then you have a better day. So this is, I know this isn't like goodbye, but it's really like sad for me.
Yeah. But you sure have been an incredible human being in my life. And you know that.
You are incredible.
Because I could tell we just hit it off.
Yeah.
And I always learn so much. And your heart is so tender and beautiful. And so I always looked forward to you coming. Yeah, it's just it's a pause.
Yeah,
and it could be a pause
like
for something different down the line. But right now, the pause gives me pause. As I said, to lean all in more than I ever thought I could possibly ever lean into somebody that I love dearly. Mm-hmm. And when God has done a work in that relationship, and you're not going back and thinking about the hurt or the hang-ups or the confusion in that relationship, it is done. It has been healed. That's power. And so you don't, I think when you still are bogged down with hurts, they give you an excuse not to love the person as much as you can. And so I can look at her and love her with a purity that I never thought I could have when we were having our mother-daughter issues through the years, ever since 20s. But a purity's, and you can't go back. You can't go back and grab onto things and put them in there to distract or divert the feeling. And that's beautiful. So I always, when I'm praying, I'm just so thank you, God, for restoring the years the locusts have stolen. And I am healthier. I got my issues, but I'm healthier because of that redemption of those times that were wounding, which we all have. You and I've talked about that with our mothers or our fathers. And I do wonder, and I kind of pull myself back because it's not me trusting him when she does go see her Lord. What am I going to do next? But you know what? This is and has been and will continue for as long as she's with us, my season, to be that bondservant to her. And that when this season is over, God will reveal, as he always has.
Always has.
What's next. And I know I'll have time. I feel very confident. It's not like all of a sudden I'll have to go to work because I can't buy a can of food. I believe he'll provide and give me space and time to grieve, and then reveal to me what's next.
Because he always guided and lead you to what's next.
Yeah. Well, I want to just thank everyone out there who tunes in. I always thought, again, we talk a lot about God because he's always showing me and surprising me with things I never even knew what a podcast was, truly, when he encouraged me to start a podcast. And it was very, very definite instruction. So I was like, huh? So I got on YouTube and started, what? I may have heard one once, but I was like, podcast? And so, by his leading and his instruction and his everything, they gave me the opportunity to do this. And I didn't think I'd be doing it forever. But in every season, there's these moments and opportunities to serve. And I know that it has served me in more ways than it has served others. But I'm grateful to all those who've listened and has been a part of this podcast since the end of 2021.
So you can go back and listen. And we'll pause in silence for a minute so you'll know it's a pause and not the end.
I like that.